fellow Americans, we have looked in vain for the courage, the spirit, the character, and the words to lift us, to bring out the best in us, to rekindle in each of us our faith in the American dream. Yet all that we have received in return is just another smooth exercise in political manipulation, deceit and deception, callousness and indifference to our individual problems, and the disgusting playing of divisive politics, pitting the young against the old, labor against management, North against South, black against white. I have faith in the American people. I believe that we are smart enough to correct our mistakes. I believe we are intelligent enough to recognize the talent, energy, and dedication which all Americans, including women and minorities, have to offer. I know from my travels to the cities and small towns of America that we have a vast potential which can and must be put to constructive use in getting this great nation together. I know that millions of Americans from all walks of life agree with me that leadership does not mean putting the ear to the ground to follow public opinion, but to have the vision of what is necessary and the courage to make it possible. I would remind all Americans at this hour of the words of Abraham Lincoln, "A house divided cannot stand."
It is with pleasure that I welcome you to our first Run, Woman, Run workshop. My name is Deborah Flagg, and I am the president of the National Coalition of 100 Black Women, Chattanooga Chapter Incorporated. We are a national 501c3 nonprofit organization. Through advocacy work as change agents to influence policy that promotes gender equity in health, education, and economic empowerment. We believe through our efforts, we will fulfill our vision of seeing Black women and girls living in a world where socioeconomic inequity does not exist. With that said, I am excited to welcome former Flint, Michigan Mayor, Dr. Karen Weaver, Hamilton County Commissioner, Kathleen Jeter, Hamilton County School Board Member, Carista Jones, NCBW members, and Facebook guests. And now, I will turn it over to NCBW Public Policy Chair, Tina Fielder Gibson. Tina? You're muted, Tina.
Sorry. Good morning, everyone. My name is Tina Fielder Gibson, Public Policy Chair for NCBW Chattanooga Chapter. Thank you for joining us this morning. Our goal is to provide information to those who may have considered or may be considering running for office and were not quite sure how to do so. Hopefully, this workshop will shed some light on your consideration. This workshop will be in two parts. Part one of this workshop, you will be hearing from three dynamic women. They will speak about their journey in the political arena, and you will have an opportunity to ask them questions after each of their presentations. Part two of the workshop will be a PowerPoint presentation, which will walk you through the fundamentals, what it takes to consider running for office. So have your pens and notepads ready. Just think, it wasn't until 1919 the House of Representatives passed the 19th Amendment, giving women the right to vote. Ironically, Tennessee was the 36th state that ratified and amended the 19th Amendment, and it was adopted and certified in 1920. And here we are 100 years later with the first female vice president. Please type in your questions to our speakers in the comment space on Facebook Live. Now, part one of Run, Woman, Run. I have the honor to present our first speaker from my hometown, and I'm so proud of her, Dr. Karen Weaver. Dr. Karen Weaver was born and raised in Flint, Michigan. She is the youngest of 3 children born to Dr. T. Wendell Williams, a pediatrician, and Marion Coates Williams, the first African American teacher in Flint Public Schools. After graduation from high school, she attended University of Michigan Flint before transferring to Tougaloo College in Tougaloo, Mississippi, where she graduated with her Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology. She went on to obtain her master's degree and in applied psychology from Long Island University in New York, followed by a PhD in child and family clinical psychology from Michigan State University with a specialization in pediatric psychology. Dr. Karen Weaver served as the first female mayor of the city of Flint from November 2015 until November 2019. While serving as Flint's mayor, she was second vice president of the African American Mayors Association and on the advisory board of the U.S. Conference of Mayors. In December 2019, U.S. presidential candidate Michael Bloomberg selected her to be a surrogate for his campaign, as did presidential candidate Hillary Clinton in 2016. A proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, Zeta Beta Omega Chapter, and a lifelong member of Vernon Chapel African Methodist Episcopal Church. Dr. Weaver has been married for almost 35 years to Dr. Rex Weaver III. They are the proud parents of 3 children, Adrienne Marie, Alana Nicole, and Douglas Quinton, and a granddaughter of Brooke Lynn. I present to you my homegirl, Dr. Karen Weaver.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I am so happy to be here. I really am. So thank you for that invitation. And let me just say a special hello to the other guests as well. You know, let me start by saying when I got this call, I thought, wow, this is really something we need to talk about. And I think that was what really brought me here, in addition to us being homegirls as well. But I was listening actually to the president, and when she was talking about wanting more women, especially Black women, to go into the political arena, and talked about us being change agents, I thought that's exactly right. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, you asked me to talk about my run and what that was like. And let me say this, I hope that no one, I hope mine is different than other people's, because I don't want anyone to have to go through the kind of run that I had to go through, because there was so much going on in Flint. And I remember, I'm a psychologist. I've never been an elected official before. And so it kind of happened by, I would say, happenstance, but then I realized it was God's plan for me to be there at that time. And I was actually trying to help somebody else become mayor when I first got involved in politics. And 4 years later, I ended up being mayor of the city of Flint, but that's a whole nother story. But I remember, you know, getting into office. And I think what was so different for me was I knew when I was running that I was going to, my goal was to really have Flint declared as a disaster, because we knew what was going on with the water. And I also went in under an emergency manager. And that's what was unique about Flint and a lot of the Black cities, the urban cities in the state of Michigan. They had been taken over by emergency managers. And so the elected officials had no voice and no power. And so that's a different way to go in. It's an unfair way to go in, and it's a difficult way to go in, especially when you're a female and you're a Black female. You know, the odds are already stacked against you. And I think what's interesting is in this time, we see so many women, and we see so many Black women and women of color that are going into the political arena. But I don't want us to be fooled or misled by that, because when we get to those decision-making tables, we see that we're still in the minority, and us being there is truly important and significant. And you see how many barriers are put up for us. You know, we have to jump through more hoops and more hurdles to get there. But what's new with that, right? So it was really interesting. And so I think one of the things I want to talk with women about is when you make that decision, be ready, have some thick, tough skin, and don't let people deter you. Like I said, I wasn't involved in politics, but I was able to go there anyway. I want us to recognize our strength and be confident in that. I remember being under an emergency manager. People said, what can you do any differently than anybody else? Oh, you don't have any power. And telling them my voice is my power. And that's something that even though a governor can come in and take your elected power, no one can take our voice. And I think that's what's so unique about Black women. That's something that we do recognize, is that we have a voice, we have a strong voice. A lot of times people don't want to hear that strong voice, but we have power there. And I remember saying, I'm going to use my mouth. I said, it was the first time I said, I'm kind of proud of having a big mouth and I'm going to use it. And I will be telling you what's going on, whether it's good information, bad news, because we need to know and we need to be educated about it. And if they tell me no, and if they won't let me do it, I'll be in front of the media every day saying, here's what's going on, here's what we need to do, and they won't let me. And so that was the way I went in, and that was the way I had to go in. And, I went in pretending that I had the power that they said they had taken. In Flint, we have a strong mayor form government. And so that means when you get elected, you get to take your team with you. However, I had to go in by myself. I didn't get to do that. And I think that's why I'm saying I hope no one goes in under the circumstances that I had to go in under. So I went in by myself, and I was surrounded with all of Governor Snyder's people that he had put in place. So it was hard. But I remember I met with I had a transition team. I just had to meet with them after work or in the morning, but I did that every single day. And I went in, like I said, pretending that I had the power that I knew I should have. I went in and asked for people's resignations. And I remember them telling me they weren't giving me anything because I didn't have any power. And so I said to them, know that I believe in home rule, and that's what I'll be working toward. So I didn't want there to be any misconceptions about why I was there and what I was going to do. And I even remember saying, I'm going to declare an emergency, or like I said, I wanted to declare a disaster, and getting a lot of, all of them telling me no and pushback. It's the wrong thing to do. The governor will be angry with you. And I'm thinking, we've been poisoned. What do you mean he'll be angry with me? We're angry with him. We can't drink our water. And moving forward in knowing what was right. And I remember them telling me also, well, if you declare an emergency, because I couldn't do the disaster because it was man-made, that all you're going to get is $5 million. And what's that going to do? I said, well, right now I have no $1 million. I'll take it and keep going. And so I went in that way. And I just stayed focused on my mission and trying to get resources for the people of the city of Flint. I said, if they don't give it to us, shame on them, but I'm not going to not ask and demand these things. And that's how I had to go at things. I remember, because I couldn't make appointments, I having a conversation with the governor. And I said, well, you know what, Governor, under the person that you've put as chief of police, our homicide rate has gone up 72%. I said, but if you like those numbers, I'll tell the people you're happy with that. I said, and the fire chief has gotten rid of that. We don't even have an aerial ladder. So when that dorm catches on fire and we have to wait for outside help to come, we know that every second in a fire is, loss of life. I said, but if you're okay with it, hey, I'm good. I'll just tell the people. And when I started talking to him that way, he started saying, oh, well, you can put your chief of police in. You can put your fire chief in. And I just kept moving that way. And things started happening. So it was interesting. It was different. But I always had, and this is one thing, and this is maybe if you're running for mayor or other positions, because one of the things you need to be ready for is have your team, because one of the things I want people to know is some of the ones that you better have people you trust. And it's a small group of people. It really is in politics, of people you can trust. And you better make sure you have a city attorney, a chief financial officer, and a police chief that have your back, because those are areas where you can always get in trouble in politics. You know, they're always trying to get us for doing something illegal. And setting you up for those kinds of things. They're always watching the money, especially when a black female is in charge. And they always have somebody watching you. And so you need, and so your police chief needs to have your back. And so those are three crucial areas where you better believe they make a difference. And so when you're going into office, those are things I want people to think about and make sure they have those to go right in there with them. You know, have that team to go right in there with you. But you know, it's the other thing that was so interesting for me is because of declaring the emergency, I was able to get help. I had no, you know, like I said, I had no resources. I went in with no money to travel, but I knew everybody needed to hear Flint's story. So when I did that, the national media, you know, we were under a spotlight. And I think that was, it was hard, but it was necessary. It was stressful, but again, it was necessary because people needed to know what was going on in Flint, because while we weren't unique for water problems, we weren't unique for infrastructure problems, we were unique in that we had been poisoned by a government and things had taken place at the local, state, and federal level as far as what happened in Flint. But I wanted people to know to use us as their voice and as a platform to get things done and to talk about things. And like I said, it was hard, it was challenging, but it was always worth it. You know, at the end of the day, it was always worth it because we were able to make things happen. And I think the other thing is women bring a unique perspective. And while we may have the same goal as our male counterpart, we may get there in a different way. And it doesn't mean that it's wrong. And that's what I want women to know. Your male counterpart may go left and we may go right, but we end up in the same place. And I think that's what's so unique about women. And we've had to juggle things and be that change agent in so many other areas that it transfers well in the political arena. But be ready for those challenges. Be ready for people not to want you there, or even not even, or think that the you're not the mayor. I remember traveling around, and if a person didn't know me, I would be with my chief of staff, and they'd always go to him as the mayor. I'm like, excuse me, it's me. And that was different for a lot of people. And that's why I said I don't want us to be confused, because we see so many Black women, and it's wonderful to see so many of us and other women of color in these powerful positions. But no, they're doing anything and everything they can so many times to keep us from getting there. And so you do have to be ready, and you better have the buy-in of your family. That was the other thing, because I remember when I wasn't thinking about running and people were approaching me about running. And I said, you know, I've got to talk to my family, because you do have to remember, it's not a 9-to-5 job where you fill out an application, you go online and put your information in. It's a 24/7 job. Whatever the elected position is you're running for. It's a 24/7 job. And you do need your family support and your friends support, because there are going to be times where you're tired, you're wondering, why did I do this? Is it worth it? But, and know that those are normal feelings. Know that those are normal feelings, and get up the next day and go right back in there and be as dogmatic about what got you there and continue on that journey, because there are so many things that they will do to make you want to feel that way as a woman. Sometimes you'll feel like, is my opinion valued? It is. And I think it's important, because this was one of the things that the president said also, is you never know who's watching you. Young girls are watching us. And sometimes I didn't even know that. And I think what excited me was not only were young girls watching me, but older girls were watching me, and women. And that was one of the things that we should not do, and we tend to do as women, is sometimes we will put ourselves in a box and say, maybe I shouldn't do that. I wondered, I've been a psychologist for almost 30 years. Am I too old to switch and do this? And we put, we box ourselves out of things. And so I hope that I inspired not only young women, but middle-aged women and senior women, because we all have something to contribute, and we need each other, and we need to support each other. And so I want women to know they're not too young and they're not too old to go into the political arena. We need your voices there. You need to be part of that decision-making group and at that table. And we should never let others make decisions for us and about us. And when women are at the table making decisions, families are better off. And so I will end with that and see if there are any questions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Weaver, with those insightful and I just know that coming from Flint, being born and raised there were a lot of challenges there. And when you stepped into that office, there were a myriad of issues that were going on. And I just applaud you for your tenacity and your fortitude, taking on that challenge. And so far, we don't have any questions in our from our Facebook Live audience, but are any of the people on the Zoom, do you want to ask questions of Dr. Weaver? Unmute yourself and ask her questions. We have 5 minutes.
I don't specifically have a question. I just admired the way and the aggressive way, assertive way you addressed the employees that were there who thought you did not have the authority to terminate them. And I am familiar with home rule, having worked with the Chattanooga City Council for 23 years prior to my retirement. So I applaud you for that. That was an excellent way to respond to them.
I didn't know what else to do. I even remember when I was when I got sworn in and I was, speaking, that was one of the things I told people I was going to work toward was home rule, because our voices had been taken, our democracy had been taken. And I thought, how dare you, we represent the people. The people have voted for us. They have chosen us to be their voice. And you have the audacity to try to take that. And not only had it been taken in Flint, it happened in Detroit, it happened in Benton Harbor, it happened in Pontiac, it happened in Muskegon, Inkster. I mean, like I said, all of the urban communities, the emergency manager law had been put in place. And so it was something that I was going to work hard to make sure we got our voice back and our democracy back. And, and that's what people need to look at, because even with what has been going on with this last election, you see where they've been trying to take our voices and our democracy and take our vote. And they know that our vote is our voice. And I thought, you know what? I'm just going to let them know. And I'm going to go in there and act like I've got it. And I couldn't wait to get rid of them. And it happened, I think 3 months later. 3 months later, I was able to get 90% of our power back. Let me take a sip of water. I was able to get 90% of it back, and then we had the financial oversight, because that's what an emergency manager is really supposed to just look at your finances and do the oversight there. But they had really come in with a lot of gusto and said, we're just going to do day-to-day operations as well. And they took over everything. And so the next year I was able to get the state completely out of the city of Flint. And it was a wonderful feeling, because we had been under emergency manager for 6 years. So I thought, I'm just going to go in and try to make some things happen. And one of the things I always knew was, I said, I knew God had my back. I knew God had my back when I went in there. And I think that was the other part of my confidence. And and doing things was, I said, shoot, you know, when God is with you, you can do anything. You can do anything. And so,
Dr. Weaver, we do have a question.
okay.
It says, good morning. How important
Well,
is your team to have around you?
Oh my.
As
your
a
team is
campaign
crucial. You have to have your campaign team around you. And some of your campaign team is not going to go with you into whatever office you're going. Some of them don't want to. Some of them are there to help you get there. But there were some that I knew I was taking with me. And I thought it was really important because I had already been meeting with my chief of police. We had already been making plans on how to address crime. I had already been meeting with my my chief advisor. So, you know, there were certain ones that I took with me. And those are the people that you can trust. And even though all of them may not go with you to whatever office you're going to, they are still the people that you can talk with and help you make decisions about different things. Because like I said, it's amazing. That's the hard part about politics is you find out who your friends are, you find out who you can trust. And sometimes you find that out in bad ways, So your team is important. Make sure you surround yourself with people that have similar views, but people that, you know, loyalty is really, that is so important and it's so hard to find. And so that team is going to be your support system. And it's crucial. It's crucial.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us today. If you can stay on towards the end of the presentation, we'll be on till 12, and then there's a lot of questions coming in, but we want to get to our other speakers. But thank you so much. Like I said, you are my Flint homegirl. We're born and raised Flintstones.
That's right.
I hope you continue your political journey. Maybe you can run for governor. Whitmore, Weaver, I mean, you know, hey. And so we will have our sister Ruthie Herford come on next. Thank you so much, Dr. Weaver, and hope you can stay on for the presentation.
Okay.
Good morning again. Advocate, passionate, community leader, and public servant. All these words and more describe Kathleen Jeter. Kathleen currently serves as District 5 Commissioner for Hamilton County. Commissioner Jeter serves on 4 committees: the Diversity and Equity Committee, on which she serves as the chairperson, and there are many more that you can read about in her bio if you look on the web. She holds a degree in Human Service Management from the University of Tennessee of Chattanooga and has more than 20 years of experience overseeing programs that help people understand community services and health insurance, including Medicaid, Medicare, and the federal insurance marketplace. Her extensive work and compassionate commitment to people have earned her recognition not only locally and statewide, but nationally as a White House champion of change, which was part of President Obama's Winning the Future initiative for the work around the Affordable Care Act. Most recently, she was recognized and awarded as Political Official of the Year 2020 by the National Association of Social Workers, NASW, Southeast Tennessee Branch. Kathleen is the proud mother of 2 sons, Jack and Austin, and is faithfully committed to the work within her church where she serves as the health wellness leader, as well as her work in the community with other faith organizations and service organizations. It's Kathleen Jeter.
Thank you so much and good morning. First, I would like to say a warm welcome and thank you to Deborah and Ruthie and Tina and Kendra and all the beautiful ladies of the coalition. It is truly an honor to receive this invite, and to the other guest panelists. When I saw who I had the distinct honor to beyond with this morning, I got very excited. Not only do I have the honor to wake up every morning as a commissioner, but when I know that there are other amazing and beautiful, strong and powerful women like Dr. Weaver and the best school board member here in Hamilton County, I get excited. And not only to hear their stories and their journey, but also to know that there are other women out here that are leading in such a powerful way. So I am excited and truly honored to be here. So I was asked to kind of share my experience on why I chose to run and to serve in this capacity. And a lot of the points that Dr. Weaver made, I was back here and shaking my head and saying yes, because it sounded a lot like my journey a little bit. I'm a first-time elected official. This was my first time running for an office such as this. Never thought I would be here, quite frankly. I had a lot of friends and individuals in the community that saw something in me that I, quite frankly, did not see in myself. And if we, many times as individuals and sometimes as women, usually have to have that. Somebody else has to see it in us before we see it in ourselves. And that was kind of my story and my starting point. I have 20 years of working in community services, both here in Hamilton County, in the urban settings, but also here throughout Southeast Tennessee in the rural counties. And within those 20 years, I've been on the ground and in grassroots helping individuals navigate many programs and many services. And so I was very fortunate to be connected to individuals and connected to systems. And a lot of those systems involved government. So I knew enough to be dangerous when it came to government, let me say it that way. But I didn't know politics to the degree that I should have. And so over the course of my 20 years of working in social services, what I was seeing and what I was finding was when I was out helping individuals navigate Medicare and Medicaid and all of these social services, when they were coming to me, I was hearing stories of crime. I was hearing the devastation of, the lack of nutritious foods in their communities. I was hearing the problems with the healthcare systems. I was hearing problems with the education systems. I was hearing all of these problems, everyday problems that were affecting them as individuals. And quite frankly, when I was sitting there listening to them, I was thinking, these are things that I myself are facing as a single mother. As Ruthie was reading my bio, I'm a very proud mother of two wonderful young men. They're not boys no more, but young men. And one of them, my oldest, is intellectually disabled. So both my sons have gone through the public education system, raising Jack, who's intellectually disabled, and those barriers and those challenges. I've also found myself, having to, struggle to make ends meet. So I related a lot with the individuals that I was helping to find services for and to help navigate. So again, very connected, had to be involved with government to some degree just because of the job that I was doing for people that I love so much, but never thought that I wanted to serve in this capacity. Never thought that I was one of those individuals that should serve. And the way that I always viewed politics was that it didn't involve people like me. And I say that meaning that it didn't involve women, number one, and it didn't involve Black women, number two. And the reason is I didn't see women running. I didn't see women serving, and I didn't certainly see a lot of Black women serving. And I was here in Hamilton County, I was very connected to more so the city process, being involved with a lot of the things that programs and services with the city of Chattanooga, but still just was not seeing the representation and the things that made me think that women like myself could serve. But again, a lot of people, saw something in me and said, Kathleen, we think you should, consider running. And I looked at them and said, no, that's not for me. You're crazy. But it was a good friend of mine who pulled me aside many years ago and said, seriously, you are an advocate. You're on the ground. You're really serving in both throughout the Southeast Tennessee region and here in the city of Chattanooga. Please consider it. And it was around that time where there were a lot of grassroots movement of getting people civically engaged and more so women civically engaged. And I started, there was this group that was starting to really kind of mobilize. I was connected to several of the ladies, and they started speaking to me, and they actually offered a workshop. And after this great friend of mine kind of pulled me aside and talked to me, this group of ladies asked me, invited me to this workshop and said, Kathleen, just come to the workshop. And it was on a weekend, and I said, why not? It doesn't hurt to be educated more on, politics and things like that. So I decided to go to the workshop. And when I went to the workshop, there were room full of amazing women, and we got the chance to learn more about politics, similar to what you guys are doing here today. And I was really intrigued. And again, it was just more so out of curiosity, not thinking I wanted to run. And they had other elected women officials there as panelists to speak about their journey. And I was sitting at a table, and this young lady that was sitting next to me, I had this look, and she must have saw it, and she said, what's wrong? And I said, there's nobody up there that looks like me. And she said, then it must mean you need to be up there. And I'm thinking, are you talking to somebody else up there, or is God talking to you? And so I left out of that workshop that weekend and said, okay, God, if this is your will, then I'm going to be obedient and just say, I'm open to receive it. And from that moment, I just started researching. I started, paying attention to certain things. And similar to what Dr. Weaver said, it was then where I started having conversations with my family and my pastor to really kind of vet if this was an opportunity. I think most of the times for us as women, when we think about running, there's a lot more challenges that we have to go through than our male counterparts. I think men who are elected officials, when they decide to run, it's a little different than when women decide. And for me, being a single mother and having two boys, it was quite different. And I knew that it was going to be a huge responsibility. So it took a lot of prayer. It took a lot of, consulting with friends and families. And once I did that and made the decision and got the answer from God that, yes, this was a time that I needed to do this, then I put my name out there. And I don't certainly regret it. It has been challenging. Right now, there's only two of us women that are serving on the Hamilton County Commission, myself and Commissioner Smetley. And one of the questions that was asked of me, are there challenges, are there biases? And I certainly will say yes, it is not easy. Similar to what Dr. Weaver has spoke of, it is hard going into these seats as women, and it certainly is harder to go into these seats as Black women. I think the expectation that people have put on me coming into this as a new elected official, being that I came in with no experience, I won by only 15 votes. I came in, the incumbent was Commissioner Beck. He had served in a great capacity for many years, did a great job. I did not come in thinking it was going to be easy to win. And so there was big shoes to fill. However, I think people underestimate the fact that because I have no experience, that, oh, she must not know anything. And it's this sense of trying to tell me things or basically underestimate my ability. And I like the way Dr. Weaver put it, my voice is my power. And I certainly am owning that every day that I am blessed to wake up as District 5 Hamilton County Commissioner, is that I realize that I have that power in my voice, and that the people of District 5 voted me in that position. My term is 4 years that we are elected as commissioners. So I am currently in my 3rd year. Just started my 3rd year in September of this year. So I am learning a lot. This, you know, being a first-time elected official, you learn a lot. And one of the things that I am choosing to do is to watch a lot of people. And I'll say this as I'm closing, is one of the things that being a newly elected official, besides all of the challenges that come with being a newly elected official, you learn a lot. And really quick, let me say this, they don't do no onboarding. So one of the things that was really like eye-opening was there was no onboarding, there was no process given to us. But one of the things that has been very refreshing here for me is, I'll say this, is that there are 2 sisters, one of them which is fixing to come behind me here and speak, is I've have had the pleasure to build a sisterhood with Carissa and Councilwoman Kumran, and that has tremendously helped me. It was those 2 women that I had the pleasure to watch and to see other women before me to serve, but it has been since serving, building a sisterhood with them that has given me also the strength and the power to continue even when days are hard. And so having that team, having that support of those sisters has been a blessing.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. And I would just like to say, this workshop was much needed because we know we have 2 races that are coming up, the mayoral race and the city council race. And yes, you can run for office, but if you don't have the wherewithal and the fundamentals down, you might get elected. And then when you get there, you might not know what to do. So Facebook Live audience, please in the comments, if you have questions for Commissioner Jeter, please post those. But if none are coming in from Facebook Live, can we have some of our sisters ask Commissioner questions, please?
I wanted to, it's not a question. I think the Commissioner said something that was really, really important.
Go right ahead.
When she was talking about being underestimated, because it happens all of the time. We're always underestimated as women. And sometimes it makes you angry, but I found out it was nice to be underestimated because you can really, you can knock them out when they underestimate you. And so at first I was angry about it frequently, but then I started using it to my advantage because they just kept on underestimating. I said, keep on underestimating me. And so when they do that, we rise even higher. And so I'm glad you brought that point out because it happens to us so many times as women. But, you know, we know how to take a disadvantage and turn it into an advantage and an opportunity. And that's what we have to do with that when it happens is we show them, and that's what you did.
I do have a question for you, Commissioner. How do you handle public criticism?
Wow. I mean, you know, that is something that, to be honest, I have had to learn. I mean, you know, it is not easy to, number one, to put your name out there on a ballot. That is something that I have had to grow into this, to learn how to navigate this public life in my private life. And part of that public life was the public criticism. You know, let's just take, for instance, like Facebook and social media. You know, I have my private page and I'm out there posting things and just being Kathleen, and then I come across a comment and it's, wow. I mean, you know, it takes me back. But the way that I've handled it is, number one, I stay connected to God. That's number one. And number two, I know who I am. I know that I didn't come into this knowing that I was going to please everybody. And make everybody happy. I know that there are going to be individuals within my district and without my district across Hamilton County that are not going to certainly understand or agree with everything that I vote for or that I say. What I do ask people, though, is this position, one of the things that I've learned now that I am an elected official, and all the elected officials that I have sat at home watching TV that I didn't necessarily like or care for. What I do now have is respect for them. And why I say that is this, again, is not easy to serve in this capacity. You're putting yourself out there. So although there's many politicians or elected officials that I don't necessarily care for and that will never get my vote, I respect them. And so what I do ask people is that we may agree to disagree. You may not understand the way I, again, vote or say something, but at least respect the positions and the people that are in them. It is not easy. And if there's something that you don't understand, reach out to us. That is the one thing that we all are, public servants. So we are accessible. So if there's something that you don't understand, is contact me and ask me. I am always willing to share my thoughts, and I am always open to hear and listen. And that is one of the things that I have really strived to do, is to be open. When I ran to be a champion of change. And that is certainly something that I am striving every day, is not to do it the same way it has always been done. And that is not easy, because I feel like that's the expectation, is that they want me to do it the way that it has always been done. And being, in my opinion, I feel like maybe one of, I was going to say very few, but maybe the only one that wants to change the system so it doesn't look the same or is the same. That's hard. And I know a lot of people don't understand that.
Well, we want to thank you so much for being a part of our panelists today. You guys are knocking this information out the box, because people really need to know the nitty-gritty when it comes down to running for office. What you guys all have in common is that you ran for office for the first time and you won, and then to be thrust into that political arena and not really knowing, the ups and downs, you still perform to your best. So thank you for coming on today. I hope you stay on to the end, because we do have questions flooding in, but we need to get to our next speaker.
Thank you.
And Sister Kendra Biggs will bring bio for our next speaker.
Yes, it is my pleasure to introduce Mrs. Carista Mosley Jones. She's born and raised in Chattanooga, Tennessee. Carista earned a Bachelor's of Arts degree in sociology and criminal justice. She also earned a Master's of Social Work degree in 2005, both degrees earned from Alabama A&M University. In 2018, Carista was selected to join the inaugural cohort of the Pritzker Fellow Program. She is currently employed as a Pritzker Fellow with the City of Chattanooga's Office of Early Learning. She is also an adjunct professor in the Department of Social Work at the University of Tennessee in Chattanooga. Carista lives by the infamous Mahatma Gandhi's quote, "Be the change that you wish to see in the world." She believes that the most important change we can make as a community is to improve educational opportunities for our children. On August 7th, 2014, in her hometown of Chattanooga at the age of 33, Carista was elected to the Hamilton County School Board. At this time, she became the youngest member ever elected to the board and the first African-American female to represent her district community. I will now turn it over to Ms. Carista Jones.
Good morning, and thank you to the National Coalition of Black Women Chattanooga chapter, and I'm so excited to be here. I'm thankful to Tina and Deborah and all of the committee for the invitation. I have been charged with the task of talking to you all about running for office the first time and then being reelected. So being in office, running for office the first time and the second time. And it has been quite a journey, I will say that. I was elected in August of 2014, and backing up to when I decided to run, I had had some conversations with my family and a couple of close friends about the possibility of running for office. I've always had an interest in government and politics and what it took to make the world, I would say, go round. But returning back to Chattanooga in 2007, I began to work with a lot of young people in various capacities, mentoring in youth groups and so forth. And I would hear all of their concerns about their schools and the inequities and things they felt like could be done better, not only from them, but from their parents and the community. And so I became very concerned at the state of the schools, especially in District 5, having been born and raised in District 5. Those schools were near and dear to my heart because I knew what they were able to be and what they had been in the past. And based on their current state at that time, it just really bothered me that they were not performing and doing as I knew they could. And so that kind of stuck in my mind and in my heart. And then I began to have conversations with my family, my parents, my dad in particular, about those things. And so when the seat for the District 5 school board came up in 2014, it was an open seat. So the person who had held it before was not going to run again. And so I figured after much prayer and consideration, why not take the chance, I should say, or the opportunity to be the change that I was seeking for those schools and students. And so I decided to pick up papers and run for office. And that was a difficult decision, but an easy decision because, and it was easy in that that's where my heart and my passion was, but it was difficult in that I knew that in running for office, if elected or when elected, I would no longer just be Caritza, but I would be Caritza, the school board member, and that took on a completely different capacity and level of capacity and responsibility. And so I ran for office the first time. It was 7 of us in the race. And so that was quite an experience in that I had some opponents that chose to, of course, politicize a nonpartisan race. And so there was quite some confusion at times. And the race began, although it was 7 of us, it kind of began to become focused on just maybe myself and another candidate. And there was times when there was criticism or things said that weren't particularly true. There was a lot of character assassination by default. And so it just became very rough and tiring sometimes for me because I'm not a person that I always like to say deals in mess, and I don't get caught up in that. I mean, I was running for office for school board. I didn't want to get caught up in the drama of anything else other than that. And I did not want to make a race that was 7 people about 2 people. So a lot of times when you're running for office, there of course becomes drama and a lot of other things that are entailed in that. And so you have to remember that you're running your race and to stay focused on what your race is and what you're trying to do and the difference that you're trying to make in efforts to win that office, right? And so that was one thing that I went through in office. And then also because I was younger, but I was from Chattanooga, I have a really big village. And so I had a lot of support, but I wasn't per se in the political field. And so I didn't have your structured campaign team, right? So I didn't have the money to hire people like some people do. What I had as a campaign team was the people that I love to say loved me. It was my village. It was my parents, my boyfriend at the time, that's now my husband, my church family, my friends, my neighbors, the people that had known me all my life, my parents, friends, so forth and so on. So my campaign team was my village, and they just I use their skills and strength sets alongside with mine to just do the work. And so I never really had a defined, I always tell people I never really had a defined campaign manager. I always like to tell people my dad was my honorary campaign manager. I didn't have those defined roles. I had a defined treasurer, and you have to, of course, choose a treasurer, but I ran a really grassroots campaign because I just pulled from what I knew and I was just true to who I was. And so that was what I did in running a campaign. And I like to express to people when they decide to run that you have to know that you have that support, because you're going to need that support along the journey. And so I went through the campaign. I won, and it was by a substantial amount of votes. And that probably was the proudest moment of my life, because I had seen all the hard work and labor and sacrifice that I had put into that campaign for 7 months come to fruition. And then I was in office for 4 years, and I came into office, like Kathleen said, they don't give you a lot of training. I'm the only person of color. I was the only second person, of color on the board at that time. The other person rolled off, and then I was left to be the only person of color on the board for about 3 years. And then we had so much going on. So we had priority schools that were at risk for being taken over. We had an incident that was a possible sexual assault that we had to deal with. We had a superintendent to resign. we had an interim superintendent. We had a bus tragedy that took 6 precious lives and affected so many others. There was a possibility of a state takeover. We hired a new superintendent. And so it just was so much going on. And all I knew was that I ran to be an advocate, to be accessible, and to be accountable. And that's what I was trying to do. And I did that with such passion because that's just how I felt. I am passionate about the children and the schools that I represent and the communities I represent. And so long story short, I was in that position for 4 years. I ran again for re-election in 2018, and I did have an opponent. So, I mean, sometimes you have that. Some people run unopposed. Some incumbents run unopposed, but I did have opposition. I ran my campaign the same way that I did the first time, grassroots. I was true to who I was. My work spoke for itself. Anybody in this community here in Chattanooga and Hamilton County and in District 5 know that I will speak up and out about what I believe is right for children. And so I ran that campaign, and although I dealt with a lot of course, character situations, again, because people, you know, that's just what they go to in politics. That did not prevail. My work spoke for itself, and I was reelected again in 2018. And so I'm now currently in my second term, and I am 6 years as a school board member. I have two more years left in my position. I'm up for reelection again in 2022. But it's just, it's an ever evolving door when you're running for office. And as a Black woman here in Chattanooga, in politics and in an elected position, you face a lot of opposition because of your skin color. You face a lot of opposition because you have people that feel like they just look at you as a Black woman and they feel like you're unaware, you're uneducated, or you don't know. And so I've often been credited for being very resourceful in knowing what I'm talking about. And that's because I do a lot of research. I read a lot, and I do ask a lot of questions. I try to make sure that I know what I'm talking about, because that matters for your accountability records. But one of the most challenging things of being one of the 3 Black women elected in Hamilton County is that not only am I one of 3, which it should be way more than that, I feel like, elected here in our city, but on the board that I sit on currently, I am the only person of color on the board. We just recently had a Hispanic male elected to the board, but I am the only Black female and only Black on that board. And so it makes it challenging at times, because not only do I represent District 5 and I am their representative, but I'm also, by default, the community has made me the representative of the African American community. So I get calls from people across Hamilton County, whether they're District 5 residents or not, when things are going on, because I'm relatable to them and their situation in their community, and they will tell me that. And so it just makes it hard. We're dealing right now with all the racial issues and inequities that are going on in our society. I'm dealing with a lot of white fragility issues in my governing body. People not ready to have uncomfortable conversations to move forward and be the change that we know we need to in our system. And so it just makes a lot of things hard. But I will encourage people that if you want to run, stay true to who you are, stay true to your message and your passion. And when you do that, your work speaks for yourself. And so when you decide to run again for that same seat or for something else, I feel like your works follow you, and people know that you are truly worthy of their vote and being a servant leader for them in their community. And so I'm going to wrap it up now so that we can move forward. If there's any questions, and I'm pretty sure when the questions roll in, there'll be a lot more to share.
Thank you so much, School Board Member Jones. There aren't any questions in the comment section, but if the committee has some questions for Mrs. Jones, please feel free to do that now at this time. And great presentation.
Thank you.
Well, I have a question. How has it been dealing with the COVID-19 situation and all the chaos that goes along with that? Can you give us a brief explanation of how that's been this year?
Yeah, COVID-19, of course, was something that none of us was prepared for, and it's very uncharted waters in any sector. However, I feel like in the educational system, it has been quite challenging because although your main focus is making sure that everyone is safe and healthy, you also have a second, I call it a 1A. So one is making sure everybody's safe and healthy, but then the 1A of that is making sure that children are still able to have access to their educational opportunities that they need to succeed, right? Because school is still going on. And I've deemed the school system and our teachers and staff, they're essential workers, whether we want them to be or not. And we truly don't want them to be because we know that's complex, but they are essential workers. And so it's been a moving target, right? In very uncharted waters. There's no silver bullet for anything that we're doing. And to be perfectly honest, we take it minute by minute, second by second, day by day, because everything is so fluid and the numbers can go up and they'll go down. And so we're doing a lot of things based on the numbers that we get from the health department and the state, local health department, and the state health department. And it kind of dictates how we move into the phases that we have created to ensure that everyone is safe, but still getting educational opportunities. But we get a lot of kickback, a lot of criticism for what's going on, because our children, contrary to the other 3 major cities in Tennessee, our children are in the building. Some of our children are in the building, and if not, some of them, they're all learning. And so we did that for several reasons. And I will say my support of that decision to do the hybrid situation is that we know in our community, the African American community, if some of our children don't have access to be able to go into a building, then their educational opportunities are headed down a slippery slope, right? And so I felt like we needed to provide opportunities and let people decide what was best for their family unit. I didn't feel like it was our decision to make an overall cookie cutter decision for the school system. And so far it has worked out. And I can especially say that it's not been the easiest transition. Teachers have opinions, administrators have opinions, parents have opinions. But when you talk to the children, they want to be at school, they want to be with their peers, and they want to be with their teachers. And so it's just been a very difficult and a very fluid and a experience. And we're doing the best that we can with it, but we don't have a silver bullet. And we've never been here before. We're just prayerful and hopeful that every decision that we make still ensures that children get the opportunities they need educationally, but are safe and healthy, and teachers included in that as well. We want them to be safe and healthy as well.
Well, I think, again, it is a really, really daunting task to want to be a public official and run for office. I thank you ladies for coming on this morning and sharing your wisdom with the public, and people, I hope, take heed to your words of advice, and that if they want to run for office, they have the ability to possibly reach out to you guys and ask questions. And I do wish that more women run for office in Hamilton County. Is, for I don't even think it's 5 women that are running for office, and I just think that's a sad situation. So coming up now would be our President, Deborah Flagg, with thank yous.
Good morning again. I just wanted to take a few moments to thank our special guest. The information has been awesome. And I hope that our Facebook family and friends have gained information about running for office. A couple of points that I just took into consideration is that coming from Dr. Weaver, that no one can take our voice. And I'd like for all of us to remember that. And one of the things that I've always been so impressed about with Commissioner Jeter is that she won her election by 15 votes. And that shows us how important our vote is. So when someone's trying to stop us from voting, just remember our votes are very important. And to Board Member Mosley, your presentation was outstanding as well. And my hat just goes off to all of you for the job that you're doing. So a job well done. And I just wanted to take a few moments to say thank you again. And now if we could go into the slide presentation, thank you. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. At present, our country needs women's idealism and determination, perhaps more in politics than anywhere else. And that is a direct quote from Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm, the first African-American woman elected to the United States Congress. In the 1972 United States presidential election, she became the first African-American candidate for a major party's nomination for President of the United States, and the first woman to run, for the Democratic Party's presidential nomination. Less than 1 in 4 of our elected leaders are women. We should all admire anyone who is willing to consider becoming a political candidate and running for public office. On one hand, it provides you with an amazing opportunity to serve and make a difference in your community, state, or even country. On the other hand, it does have a substantial impact on your life and the lives of the people close to you. Once you've decided you're in, you should know why you're running and start building out your lists. Let's do a personal assessment. Are you sure you want to be an elected official? Public service is not for the faint of heart. In fact, some candidates say campaigning is easier than serving in public office. Try talking to those who have been in office and their families to make sure you and your family are willing to make the sacrifices public officials have to make before you run. Have you talked to your family and friends? You aren't running alone. You need the support of your family and your friends, as you've heard from our speakers today. Most of your fundraising and volunteers will come from your inner circle. If you don't have their support, and buy-in, you are unlikely to find it from the wider public. Do you have a track record of achieving positive change in your community and/or throughout your career? A political candidate gets elected because voters think they will be a good advocate for them. For the most part, voters choose a political candidate that they think will get things done once they are elected. Make sure you have a plan to build or rebuild your public profile. Can you show that you can get things done in your community? Do you have a support network? You should ensure that those closest to you, your family and your friends, are in complete support of you. These people will be the first supporters, donors, volunteers, and reality checks to keep you grounded. Build a list of the people who can help you. You should also create a detailed assessment of how the people on your list can help you. This assessment will be the backbone of your campaign and your fundraising plans. And now I will turn it over to our protocol chair, Carol O'Neill. Carol?
Thank you, Madam President. I will cover points 4 through 8. Point 4, have you done your politics? Talk to the leaders and activists in your community and your local political party. It should not be a surprise to these folks when you announce your run. In most cases, you can build your own organization, but you will need to rely on the existing establishment in order to move forward. Point 5, have you gone through a campaign training? Many groups conduct trainings that you and close members of your team should attend, which will teach you how to plan and prepare for a campaign. Next slide, please. Point 6, do you have the time and capacity to run? You will need to make fundraising calls for 3 to 4 hours a day and knock on doors for 3 to 4 more hours. Canvassing and campaigning is not for the faint-hearted. There are also seemingly endless meet and greets, coffees, events, rallies, local fairs, debates, debate preparation, and much more. Next slide, please. Point 7, have you saved up money? Running is not just for the rich. However, there are personal costs associated with running for public office. Most campaigns take singular focus. You will need to have a plan to take time off from your job to campaign. Next slide, please. Point 8, can you win? Don't run for office if you don't have a path to victory. There is no point in wasting the time and money of your friends and family on a race you have no chance of winning. Winning should be thought through before launching a campaign. Make sure you take a good look at what your weaknesses are. You may neutralize your weaknesses to turn them into strengths. Next slide, please. The campaign timeline graphic. From preparation to execution, you will need to have a plan for appropriate consideration of the office you are seeking, effective exploration of that particular office, present a powerful public service announcement of your entrance into the arena, run an effective campaign, and get out the vote process leading up to the final big day, Election Day. Next slide, please. Running for office as a woman comes with a unique set of challenges and opportunities. Women running for office over the past 4 years has greatly increased. From 2016 to 2020, the number of women filing to run for Congress nearly doubled from 312 in 2016 and 529 in 2018 to 575 in 2020. Today, women make up 23.7% of Congress, 19% in 2016, but it's far greater than at any other point in U.S. history. Next slide, please. As of 2020, 28.9% of statewide executive offices are held by women. 29.1% of state legislators are women, and roughly 21% of mayors are women. Over 42,000 women expressed interest in running for office in 2018. It has been my pleasure to share this information with you. The next voice you will hear will be my sister, Ruthie Hereford, who will continue with her portion of the PowerPoint. Sister Ruthie.
Now I'll talk about challenges. Despite all the progress women have made in increasing their political representation, we still continue to face many challenges that our male candidates do not have to handle. Here are some of the major hurdles that women running for office continue to face. Next slide, please. The media coverage. Across both social media and traditional media, women continue to have a harder time receiving positive coverage. And this is both in terms of quality and quantity. Not only do women tend to get more negative coverage, but they also simply don't get as much coverage as their male counterparts, period. Next slide, please. Another challenge is fundraising. Any carrot or farmer campaign worker may know fundraising is the most important part of any campaign, because without money, there is no campaign. Female candidates have pointed out that because they are underrepresented in the financial world, they have a harder time than their male counterparts connecting with and raising money from high-dollar donors. Next slide, please. Unlikability. There's research that have found that voters put a large amount of weight on the likability of a candidate, or as it is often put, which candidate they'd prefer to have a beer with. There are also studies that have been shown. One in particular is from Barbara Lee Family Foundation, which shows that women have to try significantly harder, not only to appear qualified, but also to be perceived as likable. While voters use this metric to evaluate both male and female candidates, it has been found that only with female candidates is likability considered non-negotiable. Next slide, please. There are additional challenges for women of color. So it's also important to note that women of color running for office see an additional unique set of hurdles. For example, Oregon State Representative Janelle Bynum had the cops called on her while she was canvassing her district. And according to Ashanti Golar, the creator of the Brown Girl's Guide to Politics, women of color can also have a harder time demonstrating viability to potential donors. Next slide, please. Once you decide to run, you have to have a plan. So writing a campaign plan should be one of the first things you should do. This would be a living, breathing document for you. And a campaign plan is a written document that serves as your campaign's North Star to get you across the finish line with a win. Next, what's my message? What does a winning budget look like? And how much money do I need to raise, and how will I raise it? Next slide, please. The absence of a plan will be a major red flag about your viability to potential donors, supporters, and endorsers, which will make it doubly hard for you to mount a winning campaign. Having a plan will force you to be strategic with your time and resources with an eye toward addressing deficiencies and capitalizing on your assets to strengthen your campaign. The last thing is the exercise also involves getting buy-in from your members of your team to ensure everyone understands your roadmap to success as well as their role in helping you execute it. The next presenter will be our chairperson, Ms. Tina Fielder Gibson.
No, Ruthie, our next person will be Ms. Kendra Briggs.
Oh, excuse me, Ms. Kendra Briggs.
Thank you. So after formulating your plan, produce a brief summary of your campaign's goals and overall strategy. Think of this as an organizational mission statement or an elevator speech. You want to provide a consistent, clear, and concise way to communicate why you are running. And to determine the number of votes you need to win, look at past voter turnout. If you're running against one opponent, you need to garner at least one more vote than 50% of the total vote to win. To account for margin of errors, we recommend setting your vote goal to 52% of the expected vote. Next slide. So as you have built out your plan, you will also have to think through your base. And that is, who can you expect to support you and who can you persuade to vote for you? And when we're thinking of a strong field plan, it's critical to the success of your campaign. This section should outline your strategy for talking to voters at the doors leading up to and on the election day? How many doors do you have to knock? How many times do you have to knock on each door? Now, due to the COVID pandemic, this has limited opportunities for traditional community outreach. So think outside of the box on ways to connect with voters. Next slide. Again, we're mentioning budget and fundraiser because that is so critical. You need to account for intake and outflow, that's money coming in and expenses being paid out. So set weekly or monthly fundraising goals and write down exactly how you will achieve them. Linking your fundraising goals to your campaign budget is a smart choice. You will also need to budget for an effective communication strategy. Consider both media that you will pay for and free platforms. There's no one-size-fits-all combination to reach your voters. Factors like demographics and population density will help determine the tactic that makes the most sense for you. Next slide. And their timeline is a critical piece of your campaign. When will you announce your candidacy? Send out press releases and send out emails. Do a timed call to raise money and start spending money on paid communication tactics. When you start canvassing your neighborhood? These are all questions you should address in a clear timeline. Next slide. So let's discuss some common mistakes local candidates need to avoid. Campaigns for local candidates aren't different from those of bigger races when it comes to the need to raise money. However, local candidates will depend on their scope of influence for these resources and volunteers that they need. There are missed opportunities to have experienced consultants. Reach out to established local representatives. They may be able to connect you to resources. And an ineffective communication. Everyone loves a good pancake breakfast, but as a primary communication medium, that's hardly effective. And again, in this current environment, gatherings are not the safest way to get your message out. A positive outcome of the pandemic is the increased usage of virtual platforms like our Facebook Live, Zoom, or Teams meetings. A candidate may use these to reach out to a broader audience in a safe way. Next slide, please. And then another barrier is the ineffective use of resources. Local campaigns are renowned for using yard signs, buttons, t-shirts, and other methods as their primary means of communication. As we've written here, many times yard signs are expensive and not a very effective communication medium. Their main purpose is visibility, and visibility should be your last list of communication priorities. Other methods like bumper stickers, campaign buttons, and t-shirts are even worse in that they can be even more expensive and even less visibility. We want to think about digital ways to meet our voters where they are. And we've also heard many speak on the lack of commitment. In order to run an effective campaign, even at a local race, you need to be able to commit a serious amount of personal resources to the campaign. You will need to do call times, knock on doors, and attend events. Be prepared to engage in these activities either after 5 p.m. or plan to take time off work. Further, to run a competitive campaign, you will need to be willing to ask your family and friends for their money and their time. And now I will turn it over to my next sister, Tina.
Can't answer the question, why are you running? While this is one seems pretty straightforward, it trips up a lot of candidates. Of course, running a local race is a lot different than running for president, but you still need to have a really good, clear, concise answer to the question. The answer to this question will be a core part of your elevator pitch. If you can't answer the question in the time you would ride in an elevator, you need to edit it down. Don't know the numbers? Not knowing your numbers doesn't fly in Shark Tank, and it doesn't fly for campaigns. It's surprising the number of campaigns that are committed to their races and they run a good, strong effort, but have not taken the time to do the research on the numbers it needs to win. Before you start your campaign, you need to spend time researching the basic figures about the district and its past voting history. Next slide, please. Running the wrong race. This happens all too often. Ambitious local candidates run for Congress or U.S. Senate when there are better, more winnable local races. While there are certainly a number of high-profile exceptions to the rule, by and large, if you are running for your very first race, you won't make it to Congress. This is because you need a lot of resources to run in high-profile races, and you're often better off building your network of donors and a list of community accomplishments at a local level. And many times you can make a much bigger impact in people's lives in a local race than you can in Congress. And we see that going on every day. Next slide, please. If your goal is to actually bring about a real change, you're better off running for county council or your local board of education than you would be in Congress, filled with partisan gridlock. Even if you do hope to make it to Congress one day, and you've done a frank assessment of your changes and challenges, the best way to do that is to move slow and steady up the ladder from your council seat to state house, on up to if you want to prove your constituents and your funders that you have what it takes to hold that office. Next slide, please. When women do decide to run for office, they outprove men in elections, and they outperform them. When in office, women, put simply, are the most effective. Not only do the female representatives co-sponsor almost the double amount of bills related to women's health and compared to their male counterparts, but they also have been shown to get more bills enacted, period. Additionally, on average, districts represented by women get 49 million more federal funds annually than districts represented by men. Wow, that's amazing. Next slide, please. So should you run for office? Regardless of if you are thinking of running for an office at the state Senate or U.S. Senate level, running for office is hard. Make an informed decision on whether to become a candidate. What does it take to be a winning candidate? What should a potential candidate be thinking about and doing before they run? Determining if you are running in the right race or district, how to put yourself in the best possible position to win, defining your fundraising, vote, and volunteer goals. Next slide, please. While women still face significant obstacles in running for office, we have come a long way. There are significant opportunities for women running for office to continue to win. Are you a woman considering a run for office? Now more than ever, it just might be your time. Next slide, please. And here we have Vice President-elect Kamala Harris. Next slide, please. Run, woman, run. Would like to thank everyone for being a part of our presentation today. Thank you for being a part of our presentation today. We're going to do a short closing and then we're going to do some Q&A after that. I would like to thank our Facebook Live audience for joining us today. A special thank you to former Flint Mayor Dr. Karen Weaver, Commissioner Kathleen Jeter, Hamilton County School Board member Carissa Jones. Your words were powerful. We did have some Facebook Live questions, so if you all would put on your video, our speakers, I will present the questions to you. You will have 2 minutes to respond to these questions. Ms. Jones, what are the methods needed in order to get proper exposure when running for office? And how has it been being a wife, a new mother, and how do you prioritize your time?
Could you repeat the question one more time for me?
Okay, what are the methods needed in order to properly expose yourself when running for office? And how has it been being a wife, a new mom, and how do you prioritize your time?
Okay, so the first question, proper exposure is, I am born and raised here in Chattanooga, but I met people and found streets in District 5 that I never even knew existed. So I would say one thing is the proper exposure would be to get out there, be physically present in the community that you're trying to represent. So one, I was already active in that community and had been all my life. But when I was campaigning, I ran a grassroots campaign. So I was boots on the ground. I was everywhere, knocking on doors, meeting people in the streets, the gas stations, church, the nail salon, the hair salon, wherever people were. I was there, and especially in the districts. I went to neighborhood association meetings. I made phone calls. I personally phone banked for myself. So although I had people calling for me, I also made calls. Anywhere I could be, I was there. And so I didn't sleep a lot. Like they said in the presentation, you do lose a lot of time and sleep. You sacrifice a lot. But I was determined to be present wherever I needed to be so that people in the district that I was trying to represent knew that I was sincere, genuine, and I was available and accessible. So you need to be very present. Media, the radio, you can get on the news, social media, just anywhere that people are, that's where you need to be. You cannot run a campaign behind closed doors and being inaccessible. Second to that, what is it like to be a wife, mother, and an elected official? So yeah, when I started this journey, I was just single 33-year-old Caritza. Along the journey, I got married. I got 3 bonus babies, and then I now have a biological child that's 18 months old. In the midst of, I help care for my grandmother who has Alzheimer's. So I had my mom and my family with her, and my dad was sick, and I helped care for him. So I've been a caregiver. I'm kind of calling the sandwich generation, if you know what that is. So it's hard. It's a lot of sacrifice. And it's a lot of putting yourself to the side to be what you need to be for the community, because you have obligated and taken an oath to those people, to the community, but then you also have obligations in the home. So it's a lot of self-sacrifice, a lot of love, and being able to give of yourself, and remembering at some point to do self-care, but it's a lot of giving and a lot of time, and I just juggle it. So I keep a Google Calendar, I have a paper calendar, I do a lot of time management to make sure that I'm everywhere I need to be, but it is a lot of sacrifice, and people don't often understand that. As I close, you lose a lot of friends and support sometimes along the way, because people don't understand that it's not that you don't want to be where they want you to be, but you just have so many other obligations that take precedence. And so it's a lot of juggling and sacrifice. That's all I can say. I enjoy it though, because I have a passion for children, and I believe that what I'm doing for District 5, my 18-month-old son will soon be in school in a couple of years, and so he is going to benefit from the fruits of my labor. And so that makes it all worth it for me, not only for my child, but all the children.
Great answer. This question is for Mayor Weaver. It takes money and strong connections to run for mayor. Tell us a little bit about fundraising strategies and obstacles that you may have experienced when you were a political newcomer.
That's a good question. And a lot of the obstacles that I experienced as far as the financing and the fundraising, you really covered them in that PowerPoint. That was a wonderful PowerPoint, by the way, because it had everything in there. And it was interesting because I was running against an incumbent who had lots of money and I didn't. And, when you were talking about some of the things that happened with the media, every time the media would put out a story and they say, she seems like a really good candidate, she just doesn't have any money, people would start sending me money. And I said, oh, thank you, that really helped. So that was what I did. But I had fundraisers. I had big ones and I had small ones, because you wanted somewhere people were going to be able to give big donations, but you wanted somewhere it's $20, come, you wanted everybody included. And it was just like Mosley, you're on the Board of Education. What you were just saying, you go to all of those places, big and small, because those are the people that get you in. And the other thing that you keep in mind, because you talked about local election is different. Sometimes you need the money, but a lot of the people that were backing the opponent, they had money, but they didn't live in the city. And so we had to remember that the money didn't vote. The people voted. And so that's one of the things that's great about a local election is it is grassroots. It's grassroots, and it was getting people out there to vote, and it was going, like you said, going door to door and in all of those places that we frequent. But my fundraisers were all different kinds. I had some that it might have been $100, might have been $150. I had some that, like I said, it was $10, just $10, $20. And so you do all of those things because you want everybody to feel part of that. And like I said, and the media helped me because they'd always say she doesn't have enough money, and people would start sending me money. And and you stick with your base a lot. You stick with your base a lot because that's who's going to support you, and that's who's going to say, oh, you need this. And I had people that donated different kinds of things. Well, I'm going to pay for this commercial for you. So it was really knowing who your base is, sticking with your base and being true to them and letting them know that you were going to be their voice, because at the end of the day, they were the ones that were giving me the money. They were the ones that were supporting me and helping me. So it's a lot. And I'm glad you talked about it because you're worn out. You are worn out because, and some of it is because you don't have the money to be on the TV all of the time. Ads are expensive. They're very expensive. And so that was why we had to do more of that grassroots and door to door and being in all of those places, because because that's going to help make up for, those lack of financial resources, is doing all of that other. So like you said, just be ready to be tired. Be ready to be tired.
Sounds like you have to get your tennis shoes ready.
You need more than one pair of tennis shoes. Because you're going to wear out that first pair.
Thank you so much.
And your family is too.
This question is for Commissioner Jeter. Tell us a little bit about your experience on the campaign trail relative to campaigning representing outside your urban core of your district, specifically in parts of your district that may be comprised of conservative voters and constituents.
Great question. So campaigning for me, I went into more so the attitude of campaigning. Again, being a first time, person new to politics and new to this experience, it was more so my attitude, the attitude that I went into campaigning. And I'll say this, one of the distinct differences for me when I look back on my journey, not only for my own experience, but also from what other people have shared with me, that was a very distinct difference, is that I chose my team was very important to me in terms of who I was going to surround myself. And we've kind of talked a lot about that this morning, both in the PowerPoint and in our conversation. Is I knew that I needed people that I trusted, being that I was very new to this. I needed people that I could trust in the sense that I could say what I needed to say, and that they were going to correct me, that they were going to hold me accountable, and that I could just be me. It is very, when you're campaigning, as Carissa said, and as Dr. Weaver said, I mean, it's a lot of work, it's a lot of sacrifice. And so I knew I needed to have people that were going to allow me to be true to myself. And so I was very strategic in, first of all, building an all women's team. No hard feelings to men, but I wanted an all women's team. And all of the women on my team had no political experience. Now, in hindsight, maybe I would do that different in this next go around. But going out, I strategically chose those women for not necessarily that they didn't have political experience, but I chose them for their strengths. For instance, my treasurer was great with money. That was something that personally was her greatest strength. My public outreach person, she was her personality. She was engaging, she was a people's person, she was great with time management, things like that. So I was strategic in who I chose, not necessarily that they didn't have political experience. I think my years of working both in the urban setting and the rural setting helped me tremendously when it came to my campaigning. And my team will tell you that was the one thing out of anything on campaigning that I was eager to do, was to get out there and meet the people. As Carissa said, similar to hers, my campaign was very grassroots. I wanted to go door knocking day one. I was like, I remember meeting with my campaign manager and I was like, okay, can we go door knocking? She was like, that's not how this works. And so everything that you guys shared on the PowerPoint was really everything that I did, was creating that plan, my messaging, knowing my why. Those were strategic things that along the way my team helped me do. And those years of working both in the urban and rural setting helped me to do that. So when I did get out there to campaign and to meet the folks, I think it greatly assisted me. To the question in terms of my urban core and those constituents that are more of the conservative mindset, I think it was District 5 is a very unique district in the sense that I had already been working in District 5 and had a lot of great relationships, but I also went into it knowing that there were a lot of individuals that I did not know. And so that was probably one of the things that we strategically had to look at, was not so the areas of the individuals that I had created relationships with, but where were the individuals that I did not know, and where did I have to build those relationships? Again, the incumbent that I was going up against, he had been 12 plus years as that commissioner. So he had great relationships. He had built a name for himself. And so that was strategically what I had to go into, not necessarily building on relationships that I had, but building off of new relationships. And that's where I built my time. And I'll say this as a suggestion to anybody that's considering running. One of the things that I think helped me was when we went out and canvassed and got to know individuals in our district, is we didn't do it just one time. I would encourage anybody that's running or considering to run, is building relationships take time. Don't just think that going out there and having one conversation with one person one time is going to get it. You have to make those sacrifices and continue to do that. And don't just do it because if you're considering running right now during COVID, I think right now social media is the main platform to use, but be creative, because you'll be surprised. I had a lot of people that came to me and said, Ms. Jeter, you know, you got my vote because I saw you back in my community 2 or 3 times. And that was very unheard of for a person to come back in the community walking those tennis shoes, utilizing those tennis shoes, walking in our neighborhood a second and a third time. And that stood out to me, but that was very important. I wanted to walk the neighborhoods. I wanted people to see me, and I wanted to see them. I wanted to see their homes and see the streets that they lived in. So those were the things that helped me in my campaign.
Well, thank you so much. And once again, I would just like to say, I thank all of you for participating, and I'm just blown away. I wish I was a little bit younger, even though I'm a seasoned person. I would want to run for office, but I don't have the right tennis shoes. I would like to thank everyone for participating today. It's been such an honor listening to you beautiful, intelligent, smart trailblazers today. It was just so filling to hear you guys talk about your journeys and know that you relied on your faith too to get you through all these hardships. I want to thank those that helped out with the presentation today. Madam President Deborah Flagg, could you put on your video, please? My committee members, our Vice President of Programs, Ruthie Herford, could you put on your video, please? And our Protocol Chair, Carol O'Neill, could you put on your video, please? And my sister, Kendra Biggs, our newest baby to NCBW, could you put on your video, please? I could have not gotten through this without you guys. And our technical guru, Mr. Chris Palmer, who will probably not put on his video, but thank you for your expertise. Please be looking to hear about our upcoming mayoral and city council forums in February that will be posted on our social media sites. Our website is www.ncbw-chattanooga.org. And thank you, and please run, woman, run. And Chris, are we out? Okay, ladies, stay on. Mr. Chris Palmer is going to take a snapshot of us. We're running our video now for NCBW. We do this
I've been walking
every presentation we do. We run our little
to the sun.
video to show people that we are out here in the community and working.
Weight on my shoulders, a bullet in my gun. Oh, I got eyes in the back of my head, just in case I have to run. I do what I can when I can, while I can for my people. While the clouds roll back and the stars fill the night, that's when I'm gonna stand up, take my people with me. Together we are going to a brand new home, far across the river. Can you hear freedom calling, calling me to answer? Gonna keep on keeping on. I can feel